So you're 0-5 or 1-4 in your fantasy football league. Well, good thing you found this video because this is your last chance to turn your season around. Today we're going through the best rest of season questions that I've received all week. And along the way, there are 5 names I'm seeing constantly in my comments for trade aways, so I'm going to give you my top targets if you decide to cut your losses with those players. But before we get into questions, these are the biggest risers in my rest of season rankings, and these are my biggest fallers after my week 6 update. I've been seeing a lot of people ask about Justin Jefferson, so just wanted to start here. I'm not actively trying to trade away Jefferson. I'm not trying to make any sort of like lateral move. I'm really not even trying to get like 2 mediocre starters for Justin Jefferson, but there is a line here of guys that I would absolutely pull the trigger for if I can basically go up in that elite tier. Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely one of them. Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey. If someone's willing to give you Amon-Ra St. Brown or Puka Nacua, those are the guys that I would absolutely 1-for-1 trade right now. So just wanted to make that pretty clear, as I've seen the Jefferson trade requests come across my feed a decent amount so far. Let's keep this moving. Do people realize that a guy like Rico is still 41% available, are from free leagues? Are people, yeah, oh, this is actually really good. So I wanted to mention this too. So I appreciate the feedback, man. So yeah, when I say that a guy is 41% still available, in a lot of leagues, he still might not be on the waiver wire, right? So I completely acknowledge and understand that. The deeper list is typically in my membership community, the Fantasy Accelerator, but I'll try and get a little bit deeper for you guys on the waiver picks. So I appreciate the feedback there. I guess the moral of the story is if this guy is available in your league, and it's one of those situations where about half the leagues have him, half of them don't, just want to make sure that those kind of casual players that are watching these videos as well know that he's like one of the best pickups on the board. So I'll try and be more clear on that and try and go a little bit deeper for you guys, but appreciate the feedback there. Rest of season, McLaurin or Godwin? Yeah, this one for me is Chris Godwin, believe it or not. It's pretty close. Like, this is probably one of the closer ones that I saw, but I'm pretty bullish on this Tampa Bay offense in general, and I really just want to have more shares of it. So I think that Chris Godwin coming back looks like he's in a pretty good spot, and I think once this offensive line gets a little bit healthier and we get Mike Evans back, like, it just might be wheels up in Tampa in general. So definitely bullish there. What else we got? I think there was one other one on here. Yeah, I'm absolutely loaded with running backs. Bijan, Taylor, ETN, Swift. I have Kittle and IR. Need a wideout. Yeah, I was kind of looking at this one. So I think if you're loaded at running back, the cleanest move is probably to trade Travis Etienne or DeAndre Swift for a wide receiver upgrade. So guys that I would be kind of targeting in that range would be guys like Courtland Sutton, Xavier Worthy, maybe Deebo Samuel if you can get him. I think of all those guys, I would probably prefer someone like Brian Thomas Jr. So if you really want to upgrade from ETN, I think those would be the targets that I would have. For Swift, you have to go definitely down a tier. I think you're looking at like Matthew Golden, Calvin Ridley, Travis Hunter, something like that, someone with upside. But yeah, I don't mind trying to upgrade at wide receiver if you are pretty stacked at running back, which you obviously are. Let's keep this thing moving. Actually, let's do one of the names that I've seen the most here. So let's do that first. The guy that I've seen probably 100 times in my comments this week is Jamar Chase. So everyone wants to know now that Joe Flacco is going to Cincinnati. If you are trading away Chase, like what's a fair 1-for-1 range that you could go get someone else? So the running backs, if you're dead set on trading Jamar Chase, and I actually probably would be in the case of like trying to cash in on this because I don't think Flacco is going to like save his season or anything like that. Running backs, you could probably get Derrick Henry for him. You could probably get, you could definitely get Javonte Williams and Breece Hall for him, I would guess. But I think if you wanted to go wide receiver, I think you would want to probably land in like that Devontae Adams, Mecca Egbuka tier. So you're really looking for like a solid top 12 wide receiver or a solid like top 10 running back. So obviously if you're looking at like guys a little bit higher than that even, I don't know if you could get like a Roma Dunze or a CeeDee Lamb, but I would absolutely be making those trades. And that at running back, I don't know if you could. Derrick Henry was the one that I thought would still be reasonable because there's still some holes to poke in that. We talked about him as like a trade target, but if you can get a tier up as well, like Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Devon Achane, those would be kind of the guys that I think would be really big wins if you are set on trading away Jamar Chase. So hopefully that's helpful as well. Let's jump back into some questions here. So if we're looking at like the Krosky Merritt one, let's do that. So would you trade Corey Krosky Merritt for Walker? And also, would you package Warren or Goddard for Marks and McBride? Yeah, I would say it's like a small downgrade in value. I would probably, rest of season, I do have JCM slightly above Kenneth Walker, but it's close. I think it feels like more of a lateral move than anything. The other one, I think, is pretty easily the second side of that. So if we're looking at Jaylen, are we looking at Jaylen Warren or I think Jaylen Warren plus Dallas Goedert versus Woody Marks, Trey McBride? Yeah, pretty clearly the Trey McBride side for me. So, yeah. Amari and Hampton. Would you send away Hampton, receive Brees? I would. Yeah. I mean, it depends on where you're at. You said you're 4-1. So I think if you're willing to ride things out with Amari and Hampton and you feel pretty clearly that you're one of the best teams in your league, you could probably stick with Hampton. But rest of the season, that's taking into consideration all of the weeks that we have left. So yeah, Brees Hall is going to score more points, I would imagine, than Amari and Hampton. So I think if you're going to move Amari and Hampton, you probably would want to even get a little bit more than Brees. But I think it's a pretty clear upgrade in value rest of season. But if you're trying to stay, I guess, with as many studs as possible, I think it's a tough one, man. It's like really like a personal question based on you being 4-1. Should I trade Judkins for Jacobs or for Hurts and AJ Brown? Yeah, this one for me, Josh Jacobs is a pretty big winner for me over Judkins. So if you can get Jacobs for Judkins, I would definitely do that. Jacobs is a strong upgrade for you. And the other one I would probably do as well. I think Hurts and AJ Brown together is going to give you a lot more value than Quinshon Judkins. So I like both those deals for you if you can get it done. What else we got? Let's do Jaylen Waddle and Isaiah Pacheco. Let's do that one right now. Where was that one? There it is. Okay. I received an offer of Lad Mason for Waddle Pacheco. So I would prefer Lad and Mason. I still think that Lad McConkey still has a lot of room to grow. I guess I'm just really bearish on Isaiah Pacheco in general. So while Jordan Mason is probably closer to a trade away than a trade for me at this point, I look at Waddle as slightly above McConkey the rest of the way, but it's just such a big difference in Jordan Mason versus Isaiah Pacheco that I think I would prefer the Lad McConkey side, if that makes sense. Another name that I keep seeing in my comments is Jameson Williams. So if you were dead set on trading away Jameson Williams, these would be the guys that I'd be trying to get. We were just talking about Jordan Mason at running back. I think that is at least reasonable for him. But if you wanted to go up a little bit, I think you probably could back into like a Cam Scattaboo, Jaylen Warren, Quinshon Judkins. I think Judkins would probably be my target for Jameson Williams. If you could get him, I think that that's a really good deal for you on the running back side. From a wide receiver, I think that I still would want to get up a little bit as well. So if you can get into like the Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton, Lad McConkey tier for Jameson Williams, I think that that is totally fine. Quentin Johnston, honestly, I think both of the Chargers guys would make some sense there. But I think my target for Jameson Williams would be like a Xavier Worthy type player. So hopefully that helps you guys if you are dead set on moving Jameson. Next question, sell James Cook for Henderson and CeeDee Lamb. I would prefer Travion Henderson and CeeDee Lamb to James Cook. I have Cook and CeeDee Lamb basically neck and neck rest of season. So getting Travion Henderson on top of that, I think is a pretty decent sized win for side B. I would say that, I mean, with all of the fumbles and Ramondre really just not improving in that area, it's really hard to give Travion hasn't been that great this year, right? For these rookies, it's really hard to just give him the keys. But when it comes down to it, like you can't keep giving the ball to someone that's going to have fumbling issues. So I think Travion trending up. So getting him and CeeDee Lamb for James Cook, I like that quite a bit for you. 14-team PPR. My running backs are Javonte and Genty and Kamara. So do you think I could trade away Kamara and Mike Evans for Judkins, Jerome Ford? Yeah, I think that one, I think I would still prefer the Kamara and Mike Evans side. I have Judkins and Mike Evans very similar. Very similar. And it's not like Alvin Kamara's value is going to completely go away. So yeah, I would prefer the Mike Evans and Kamara side to that one. Is trading away Charbonnet for Woody Marks worth it for me? This is like basically a lateral move to me. Marks is like maybe, I guess, slightly ahead, but it's basically right next to each other. So I think that only makes sense if you prefer the Marks role or situation. It's really not a big, like, meaningful gap. Another Woody Marks question. Woody Marks or Hassan Haskins? Yeah, I still think Woody Marks on this one. This one by a pretty decent margin. I'm not really sure who's going to be emerging in that other backfield. Woody Marks, we know, is going to be a big factor in fantasy the rest of the way, in my opinion. Let's talk about Jordan Mason because he keeps coming up, right? So it's another question I keep seeing in my comments. If we have, really, this Vikings team getting a little bit healthier, Aaron Jones coming back soon, all of that. If you did want to move on from Jordan Mason, I'd be trying to back into that Woody Marks tier. Cam Scattaboo, Jaylen Warren. Those would be the guys that I would really want for Jordan Mason. If you happen to like DeAndre Swift a little bit, or that's fine. I have him lower than Mason. Zach Charbonnet kind of right around that same one. But my target would be like Jaylen Warren, Cam Scattaboo, Woody Marks at running back. If you wanted to flip him for a wide receiver, I think we would want to try and get you like a Quentin Johnston or Ladd McConkey tier. So one of the Chargers. And if you can't do that, you could go down slightly for like a Matthew Golden. Gives you a little bit of upside. These rookies tend to be a little bit stronger the rest of the way. So that would be kind of the guys I'd be looking at for Jordan Mason. So hopefully that's helpful as well. All right. Is ETN for Derrick Henry a fair trade at this point? Other running backs, Jacobs, Judkins, Mason. Yeah. To me, it's still Derrick Henry by a decent margin over Travis Etienne. I know a lot of people are upset with what's going on. The crazy thing is, and I think we're going to get to it in a second. Might as well go there now. See if I can find this. Yeah, if the Ravens lose 3 more games, they're pretty much out of the playoffs. Do not trade for Henry. I completely disagree with this. The Ravens are still favorites to win the division. Like, this isn't over. I still think that once they get healthy, they're going to play, and they're going to play well. This is a team that had put up a ton of points earlier in the season. The defense is not good. I'm with you on that. But I actually really like Derrick Henry as a buy low this week, mostly because I'm betting on the Ravens to not be this bad the rest of the way. The fact that they're still favorites and that Vegas still has them as a favorite to win the division, even when they're 1-4, is crazy. But yeah, I actually still really like the Derrick Henry side of this deal. Jordan Addison is kind of an interesting one as well. Someone mentioned that. I think it's a little bit further down. Yeah, so thoughts on Jordan Addison. I think you would want to kind of back into like someone like AJ Brown, ideally, if you're trying to move Jordan Addison. I have him like kind of in that tier. I mean, that tier below, obviously. But if we're looking at guys around that, and like if you're trying to give you a better idea of where I value Addison the rest of the way, I think he's kind of in like that Chris Olave, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Smith tier. Maybe like the Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans tier. Those would be like the guys around Addison. So I still have Addison significantly below guys like Zay Flowers, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Debo Samuel, Xavier Worthy, those guys. But I have them pretty far ahead of like DK Metcalf, T. Higgins. I have them ahead of Jameson Williams. I have them ahead of Michael Pittman, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley. So hopefully that's helpful when looking at Jordan Addison rest of the season. He's still someone that I'm actively trying to acquire for sure. Who does better rest of season, Pickens or Zay Flowers? Very close in value. I would say Pickens slightly, but it's really just making a bet on that offense. I think that they're very close to each other in my rankings. Egbuka or Quentin Johnston the rest of the way? Yeah, Egbuka, clearly for me, significantly ahead. But I am a big Egbuka fan. He's in like all of my season-long teams that matter. So that one has worked out for sure. Just traded Warren and McConkey for London and Benson. Yeah, I like that one for you. I would have London as the best player in this deal by a lot. And then I would have Trey Benson as a slight downgrade from Jaylen Warren. But once Trey Benson gets back, I do think he's going to take back over that role. So just getting London, I think that's a nice value win for you in a 2-for-2. I like it. The other guy that I guess I'd be maybe trying to trade for, if you're trying to trade away Addison, I didn't mention him before. Quinshon Judkins is another running back that's kind of right ahead. So I think that's a clean 1-for-1 if you're trying to trade him away. Kenneth Walker and Javonte. Kenneth Walker versus Javonte. Yeah, Javonte by a pretty decent margin. I mentioned it on the last video. Definitely taking the L on Javonte Williams. I have basically none of him across my leagues. He's looked great. I think that's a lesson going forward after completely missing. Um, these guys that have had like these crazy knee injuries the season after that, it usually takes them like a full another year to get that explosion back. So shout out to everyone that was on Javonte. I was not one of those people. At this point, trying to correct that in the rest of season rankings for sure. And I do have him significantly ahead of Kenneth Walker, if that helps. We talked about the Ravens and the playoffs. Yeah, Genty versus Derrick Henry is interesting, and especially if you're going to get Baker Mayfield, who, again, I'm trying to acquire shares of him. I don't think he's going to be like that top 5 quarterback, but I could definitely see him being like top 8 for sure with his weapons coming back and just the way this team wants to play. I like the Derrick Henry and Baker side over Genty. Genty is a guy that I'm actively still trying to trade after these last 2 weeks that have been pretty good. It's been nice to see the role increase. It's been nice to see him start to get more involved in the passing game, all of that. But this offense as a whole, I mean, we've seen how bad that Geno's played, but also this offensive line, none of those things are going to just magically fix. So the volume is going to be good. I'm pretty confident in that. But I think the upside for Derrick Henry is still a lot stronger. And then if you can upgrade at QB with Baker, I like that as well. These questions are really hard, so I just wanted to flag this for anyone that's been answering or asking a lot of questions on my videos. I appreciate you guys commenting. Like, going through those is actually really helpful for me as I like start to gather my thoughts on the rest of season and trade targets videos. So anything like this, like, should I just ride this out or make any major trades? It's just really hard for me to do any of this without like any context on what your record is, any specific deals you're fielding or considering trading. Just like looking at your whole roster is really difficult. So let's try and stay away from those if I can. Should I try to trade Waller for Warren? I would rather have Warren if we're talking about running backs. Let's see. The other one is a little bit closer for me, so let's check that out. So if we're talking Tyler Warren for Waller, I'm trying to see where I have Waller the rest of the way. Yeah, I still have some significantly lower. So if you have someone that's willing to give you Tyler Warren for Darren Waller, I would absolutely be doing that. Yeah. I just wanted to see how big the gap was. Yeah, I just assumed it was Jaylen Warren. If you're talking about Jaylen Warren, which is a little bit closer, I guess, I still think I'd rather have him than Darren Waller. I like what Darren Waller has been able to do, but it's been on such like a limited amount of routes that I think I'm just going to be late to Darren Waller if that ends up continuing. Don't want to be early, I guess. You're already late at this point, right? If someone scooped him up. Jackson Smith-Njigba versus Josh Jacobs. Yeah, this is tough, right? My winner is Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm not trying to trade away this guy. He is on a historic pace from a like yards per route run perspective, like absolutely dominating. I think Puka Nacua has like the record when it comes to that for the season. Jackson Smith-Njigba is like 2x that right now. So if he can continue even a portion of what he's been able to do from an efficiency standpoint, we talked about how we just haven't really seen much from Geno Smith, but like Sam Darnold has looked great. So I think my most important league, I have JSN, thankfully. So maybe I'm a little bit biased on how good he's been, but versus Josh Jacobs, I prefer Jackson Smith-Njigba. Yeah. Another player that I hear a lot about, like we're just talking about the Raiders offense, Brock Bowers. So if you're dead set on trading away Brock Bowers, some guys that I think you could get for him, Quinshon Judkins, I think you could probably get someone like Omari Hampton for him. It depends on where your team's at. If you're trying to go wide receiver, again, another target, Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton. I think those are the guys that I would be trying to get. I think that's the tier, basically. So if you have a tight end that you're comfortable with and you're comfortable moving on from Brock Bowers, I think you can get kind of like a mid-tier running back or mid-tier wide receiver too, something like that. I think that those are still pretty clean. The cleanest matches are probably like Worthy, Sutton, or Brown, Hampton, something like that. But hopefully that gives you guys a good range if you're curious about Brock Bowers. Michael Carter and AJ Brown was the next one I was looking at for Nico Collins. Yeah, I actually like that for you. I have a slight edge for Nico Collins in that deal. I'm not actively like trying to trade away AJ Brown. I still think he could rebound a little bit, but I do have Nico still significantly ahead of AJ Brown. So just that alone, I think is solid. You're giving away Michael Carter, who doesn't have a ton of value going forward, as kind of a throw in there to get him. I like that. Nice work. Henry and Rashee Rice for Judkins. Yeah, I like Derrick Henry significantly more than Judkins, and if you're getting Rashee Rice with that deal, I I think that the side A of that Henry and Rashee Rice would be what I would like. I don't think I would do. I think that's way too much to give up for Quinshon Judkins. Yeah, move JCM and Michael Carter for Pittman and Benson. 10-man PPR, so getting Benson is like kind of a little bit of stash. Okay. Yeah, I think that one's really close. I think it's really close. So you know more about your team than I do. I have like the values of all those guys put together, slightly towards side A, just because JCM is a little bit higher than anyone else in this. But I think it's totally fine. Michael Pittman and Trey Benson, if that gives you a little bit more depth, I think that makes a lot of sense. George Pickens is another one that people keep asking about. Thinking of moving George Pickens, what types of guys should I be offering? Yeah, some running back targets for him. If you did feel a little bit better about this offense in Cincinnati, Chase Brown, I think, is in this range. Amari and Hampton, Chase Brown, Quinshon Judkins, again, those would be kind of the guys that I'd be trying to get. At wide receiver, Pickens is like right there with Zay Flowers. I think if you want to go up a little bit, you're trying to back into like Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton, like slight upgrade, a little bit of a swing there. But yeah, I'm not actively trying to trade away George Pickens. I think there's better days ahead for sure. Once CeeDee gets back and some of the coverage starts kind of going that direction, I think he's had some really tough matchups recently as well. Just traded McConkey for Walker. Really need a running back after Hampton got hurt. Yeah, I think I still prefer McConkey. I think that if you really need running back help, it's one of those deals potentially that helps both sides. So totally fine. There's always nuance there with if you're in dire need of a running back, having to give up a little bit more value, I think makes total sense. Is Alvin Kamara and Genty for James Cook a good trade for me? I prefer Cook in a vacuum. He's the best player in this deal. But if you really need depth, Alvin Kamara and Genty together, I would have them as a combination as a slight edge rest of season. But if you're like a 4-1 team, 5-0 team, maybe even a 3-2 team, I think I'd rather have the James Cook stud on my roster. But it really only makes sense if you're consolidating for a stronger starting running back and you really don't need the depth. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of these extended rest of season Q&As, and I'll do another one next week maybe. But in the meantime, hit subscribe and I'll see you Sunday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern time for Start Sits.